Hi, I'm Dave Vanderwill, Director of Technology Development at NSL Analytical Services. Today I'm here in our Analytical Laboratory, which is one of two laboratories here in the Cleveland area. And I'm nestled away here in the corner of part of our powder characterization laboratory. And here today to talk about laboratory testing to support metal additive manufacturing industries. Briefly though, before that, I'll talk a little bit about NSL. So we're a network of ISO 17025 commercial laboratories for testing commercial products and materials. We specialize in metal alloys, technical ceramics, polymers, and composites. We partner with customers in a wide variety of industries, including aerospace, mining, metallurgy, power systems, medical devices, automotive, chemical and petrochemical, and even ophthalmic industries. And the work we do supports quality control, process development and troubleshooting, and research and development efforts at those customers. So when we talk about metal additive manufacturing, quickly, I'll just give a brief intro about what that means. So additive manufacturing is 3D printing. Have a demo sample here. So here's a 3D printed metal specimen that was made with powder metal and laser, what's called laser powder bed fusion. So you can see it's a fairly intricate structure. It's made from a single solid piece of metal. And the reason why companies would use additive manufacturing in place of conventional manufacturing, threefold. First of all, it provides much greater design freedom for the engineers developing the parts. Potentially reduces the number of manufacturing steps. This may have been, for example, a series of welded tubes previously, or a tube sheet that was bent and then welded to a base material. And in contrast, this is just made as a single part. And then also for on-demand manufacturing. So in the case where you're making very low-run part numbers or very customized parts, or a case where you have non-inventory parts, which is a big thing for aerospace, for example. And also it provides the opportunity for customers to make localized production where they're actually making replacement parts at their plant where they're going to use that part instead of from a warehouse or another manufacturer. So in talking about the different types of additive manufacturing processes for metals, what I'm focusing on today are the powder-based processes. Example is laser powder bed fusion that was used to produce this part. And these processes are quite a bit different from conventional powder metallurgical processes. The testing involved is twofold. One is testing the metal powders themselves. So these metal powders are very specialized with unique properties for 3D printing. And they are two things. They're either raw materials used in the printing or in-process materials or recycled materials used during the printing process. The materials consist, I think this one's pretty heavy. This is probably a nickel super alloy, which would be used for high temperature applications. Other common materials include aerospace and medical grade titanium alloys, stainless steel alloys, cobalt alloys for medical devices and other high wear resistant applications, and then lightweight alloys like aluminum and magnesium alloys. Then talking about the type of testing we do in this laboratory, it kind of occurs at three different scales. There's the bulk properties of the powder themselves, such as the powder flow behavior, and that can, again, be comprised of different types of tests. We use something called dynamic avalanche rheology, also conventional funnel flow rate measurements and flow indices. We look at density of the powders as a bulk, apparent density, and tap density. And then more recently, we focus a lot on moisture content of these powders, which can be very low and difficult to measure. And for that, we use a technique called Karl-Fischer titration, which is a chemical titration technique to measure moisture in these types of materials. So then moving from the bulk properties on to the particle properties at the next scale, we're looking at things like the elemental distribution of elements within the particle, whether they reside on the surface or in the bulk phase. We're looking at porosity of the individual particles, the pore size and shape. also the skeletal density of the particles, whether there's a lot of porosity in them or not, and then properties of the particles themselves, such as the particle size, the particle shape, and surface texture and morphology. For that, we use techniques like laser diffraction. That's the instrument behind me here for particle size distributions down to about 1 micron. And then we use things like gas absorption, krypton BET absorption, for example, to measure the surface area of metal powders very precisely. And then beyond that, we look at the base material properties themselves. And this is primarily the bulk and trace chemistry of the metal alloys. We have a very wide range of analytical techniques, from spectroscopy methods to combustion, inert gas fusion techniques, as well as classical wet chemistry techniques to look at those chemistries in the metal powders. And then also we can look at the true density of the material using something called helium picometry, which is based on Archimedes' principle and basically just looks at the fundamental density of the metal itself rather than the particles or the powder. So then outside of powder characterization, again, we go back to testing the final printed parts or test specimens. Many times, instead of taking a final printed part and destroying it to measure its properties, the manufacturer will make a sacrificial test specimen, such as a cube or a bar, from which we will then conduct tests. Chemical analysis, very similar, is done with the powders. The only difference being, in this case, there's very careful specimen preparation that occurs, and then moves on to metallurgical evaluations. This is, for the most part, conducted in our metallurgical laboratory, which is just a couple miles from here in Cleveland. And there they'll perform mechanical testing, things like tensile strength, impact resistance, micro hardness of the materials, as well as metallurgical analysis, including optical and electron microscopy, things like failure analysis and root cause evaluations. Thank you for joining me today to talk about testing for additive manufacturing. Please reach out to us to talk about your manufacturing and product development needs. Just type in NSL Analytical in your web browser, and while you're at our website, check out a series of webinar recordings covering a very wide range of topics, and they're available on demand for you to watch whenever you'd like. And also on our website, you'll find multiple ways to contact our customer care team, who can then connect you with our technical specialists. We're looking forward to engaging you with teams of our chemists, metallurgists, and engineers, and we look forward to collaborating with you. Thanks.